Hello everyone. Now because I like rocking things late to the party, I like being after the fact, I'm finally going to do an amalgamation of some Hunger Games tags that were doing the BookTube and YouTube rounds back in anticipation for the release of the first film adaptation. I've kind of taken the questions that came from two tags, and I'll try and spot which ones they were, and I'll link the creators in the doobly-doo in my pants, but I'm finally going to answer them now. Question number 1. Peter or Gale? Which team are you on? Of course you probably all know my answer is team neither. Team no one. I really don't care. There were probably much more pressing matters for Katniss to be concerning herself with, especially I think it really reached a head of irritation with me during Mockingjay, because there were moments where Katniss would literally stop whatever the hell she was doing and just ponder which boys she should choose. And I'm like, okay, yes, romantic entanglements and whatnot are pressing emotional concerns to you, especially if you're young. But goodness gracious me, girl, you've got like a heap of districts to save and a lot of people's lives depending on you, and you have an evil dictator to take down, and I think you should be concentrating on that. The whole team bullshit, aside from just, I find that kind of thing annoying anyway, I just thought it was taking up a lot of unnecessary time when there were other more important things to concern yourself about. Also, I didn't really ever have a preference for either of the guys. Gale actually kind of reminded me of Jacob, a la, like, Eclipse at times, which was a bad thing. I didn't really have too many issues with Peter, I suppose. At times I even felt bad for the bloke, but I really actually would have rathered he and Katniss have a friendship. I think that it was fine that they had their kind of excuse for a romance in the first two books, if you like. That was sort of interesting, and I guess it took it from a different angle because it was Peter, you know, trying to attract the attention all the time of Katniss, and he was the one being overt with his emotions and things, so that was a nice little subversion there. But I think that I would have liked if it had culminated in them deciding that they weren't really meant for each other in that regard, but they'd formed this bond and a really strong friendship that they would always keep. A lifelong friendship would have been really nice, and I would have been totally fine with that. That's why I hated the end of Mockingjay. I thought it was a huge cop-out and an insult, and I just hated it. So I didn't see a plausible romance with Katniss with either of the guys, so I'm on team neither person. Favourite character? I have a few favourite characters, and they're all supporting players, as they always are for me. I really like Haymitch. I care for him a great deal, even though he's not necessarily always that likeable, but I appreciate him for that, and I think that his attitude towards the games and such was a much needed dash of realism and logic and common sense, especially in the first book. It was nice to have him there, despite the fact that he was a drunk, and a lot of people just took it as drunk and ramblings and whatnot. I liked his cynicism and his stance against the games in a way. I thought that it was quite refreshing, considering everyone else was like seemingly not questioning the insanity of all of it, so I really appreciated him being there. I'm a huge Cinna fan, you know that. I really love Cinna. He's calm. I like his calm. I like his very subtle, very quiet way of rebelling, and I like his quiet, cool, calm wisdom that he can offer, and the fact that it's kind of unexpected coming from the fashion coordinator. And I really like Finnick. I became a huge Finnick fan. I didn't expect to. I thought when we first met him I was rolling my eyes and thinking he was a douchebag, but I really grew to care for him and loved his personality in the end. Really cared for him and his plight, and I really liked his relationship with Katniss. I liked their friendship. Question number 3. Do your best impression or impersonation of a character. Well, if we're going to be lazy, I can just do this. The rule is just win. That was a really bad impersonation and really lazy impersonation of Haymitch, and I don't have a glass full of grog, so it probably doesn't have the same effect. But as I'm wearing pink, I guess Effie would, I don't know, probably wear this crap on her head really weird and say something like, may the odds be ever in your favour. That's me being very lazy with impersonations. I think Effie would appreciate this scarf. She'd probably want this scarf, right? She likes pink. Question number 4. If you could choose one weapon in the games, what would it be? My weapon would be no weapons, because as you know I do not like violence, and I would not want to engage in violence in the games. I would rather get a utensil. If I could grab a utensil from the cornucopia, I'd be grabbing like a water bottle, or something that I know would be helping me to survive as opposed to attack, injure, maim, kill other people. My weapon would be evasion. I'm totally team Foxface. Question number 5. What's your opinion on the cast of the movie? When the cast was announced, I had not yet read the series of books, so I owned all of them but had not yet read them. So I was fairly indifferent to who was being announced. I don't really question anyone who was cast. The material they had to work with, I think everyone did reasonably alright. I was very happy, I will say, that Stanley Tucci was Caesar Flickerman. Question number 6. Which tribute is most like you and why? I don't know if there's a tribute who is most like me, because there was no one running around saying these games are insane, you're all nuts, this is an awful, awful situation, and ranting and raving about the moral implications of all of this and stuff. And also there was no one who actually actively attempted suicide right away, which was totally going to be my tactic. There isn't really any tribute I can think of who kind of acted the way that I probably would were I to end up in the games, but certainly later on when we get to the tactics question, I think that I would certainly be closer to someone like Rue or Foxface in terms of just evading everybody and hiding up trees. That'd totally be my style. Question number 7. What would be your, if you were in the games, what would be your strategy? Would you have allies or would you be alone? I'd certainly be alone. If I was with anyone else, I'd just be a burden. I wouldn't want to engage in anything. I wouldn't want to be enacting plans to hurt or kill other people. I just wouldn't. I don't think that pairing me with anyone would be very kind to them. I think I'd rather be alone because I'd be more guilt-free, I think, were someone else's welfare not depending on my actions. And I'd certainly be doing kind of what Foxface did and Rue. I'd just be evading everyone, staying out of the way, and kind of just looking after myself for as much and for as long as I can without hopefully coming into contact with anybody else. The real strategy that I'd be doing if I somehow found myself in the situation where I ended up in the games was suicide. I'd be getting myself out of there ASAP. Because if there's no other way, and the only other means is my dying violently at the hand of a fellow tribute or having to kill someone, then yeah, I don't like those options, so I'm finding my own way out via myself. Sorry if you think that's a depressing answer, but I'm keeping it real. Question number 8. What scenes were you most looking forward to in the movie? I think that I was more so worried and concerned about certain scenes as opposed to anticipating anything in particular. I was really worried about how they do What's-His-Face's death via the dogs. I was really worried about how that would play out. I was concerned about having to witness some of the violence that the book alludes to. I was more so just worried about how I would react to certain things once they were depicted on screen. It's always, as I said, it's even more difficult for me to see something than to read about it. Question number 9. How long would you last in the games? I wouldn't at all. No chance. Question number 10. What is the strangest thing that you thought would happen in the books? Strange? Honestly, I don't know. I wasn't trying to make any guesses as to things. I was certainly not trying to anticipate any of the events of the games themselves. I was just going along for the ride and seeing what would play out. I sort of was more so just hoping that certain things wouldn't happen, and for the most part they ended up happening, so that pissed me off. Question 11. How were you introduced to the Hunger Games? Several years ago, my friend Dom gave me the first 2 books and said they were great. I'd been hearing them discussed in the book community, but I did not particularly have any interest in reading them, and my friend and Dom told me they were really addictive and you read them really fast, and she had very much enjoyed them. And I said, oh, rightio, and then did not read them for 3.5 years. As I've said in the past, I can't pick up a book unless I actively want to read it at that time. Question 12. What district would you live in? Well, I thought about this, and if we're going to just take my own life and transpose it into the country of Pan Am, the nation of Pan Am, then I probably actually would be in District 12 because my father is a coal miner. Question 13. What was the most emotional moment for you in the books? Because I couldn't be asked trying to remember what his name is, I'm going to keep calling him What's-His-Face. What's-His-Face's death via the dogs made me pretty damn upset, simply because by the end, that was right at the end of the first novel, and by then I was so disgusted with what had been happening during the game. I was just so mad at the very existence of all this brutality that by the time it took that poor kid several hours to be eaten by those dogs, I'd had enough. So that was actually the moment that had me sobbing. Everything else, really, within the rest of the series, I didn't react to that strongly. I hate to say it, but I think I actually became desensitized. I knew that the next 2 books would just have more violence in them anyway, because it had to kind of build upon what the precedent had been of the first book, so I had to tell myself I had to stop caring as much. Question 14. What item would you take from home into the arena with you? Like I said before, I'm not saying this to upset anybody, and I hope no one takes moral offense at what I'm saying, but my god, we're talking about the Hunger Games, so if you want to take moral offense, why have you read these books? But my strategy would be suicide, so I'd be trying to smuggle in some sort of pill I could take to get myself out of the games. The second the games start, boom, boom, out, I'm gone. That would be my deal. And I wouldn't want a sentimental object with me, because that would make that even more difficult. It would make the whole process of, even if I actively decided to participate in the games, I think having a token from home would make it even worse. I'd be more reluctant to have to do what I have to do in order to win the games. Question 15. What was the most evil plan made in the books? I think the entirety of the games as a means of community control and keeping your society stable and under your thumb is the most ridiculous and heinous notion ever. Just the very existence and structure and presence of the games themselves is the #1 evil, I think, in the books for me, certainly. And question 16. Who is your favourite villain in the trilogy? I don't know if there's... I mean... Are there even other villains? Like, President Snow, honestly, is such a stereotype, really, that I don't even consider him a villain of note because he's actually just really boring. So those are my answers to some of the Hunger Games tag questions that I've kind of all mushed together, and I hope that I answered okay. Again, I'm sorry if I offended anybody, but we're talking about the Hunger Games. It's a lose-lose situation on the moral offence scale. That's all for now, and I'll see you later. Bye!